Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, June 16th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 75 days, the game against Michigan in 166 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. Look at that. I managed to get through the intro in just one shot. I did remember how to do this show. It has been a minute, peeps. Thank you for your patience through what was a fantastic summer vacation for me. Thank you also to all of my teammates at Buckeye Huddle who helped cover for me while I was out of town. Chief among those, Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com. He was one of the frequent fill-in hosts while I was there, and now he is back in the guest chair. Tony, thank you for your service. And I did want to talk to you about something that happened while I was out of town, and that was Ross Bjork talking about his preference for what the college football playoff might look like, and Ryan Day has sort of weighed in on some of that stuff as well. And then I wanted to look back at which of the various formats might have worked out best for Ohio State over the previous 11 seasons of the college football playoff. So I guess let's start, Tony, with the what you talked to Ross Bjork about on Thursday last week, I think it was.
Yep.
His views on what he wants to see, what his choice would be for the college football playoff format.
Yeah, his choice would be the 4-4-2-2-1 format, which would be the four automatic qualifiers for the SEC, the four automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten, two automatic qualifiers each for the ACC and Big 12, and then the highest group of six, I guess, ranked conference champ being that one. Then there's three at-larges, Notre Dame and whomever else can get in there. And that's his preference, and he's got a lot of different reasons for that. I think the top two answers for him were content and good games, which are great opportunities for the football players. And that's where he is right now on his preference. And we can get into why that means better content, later on in the show. But his preference is 4-4-2-2-1, which leads to bigger games, better games, and more things that you can do with those games.
And I know that one of the big talking points there for not just from Bjork, but from kind of everyone on the Big Ten and SEC side of things in terms of here's why we need to get four automatic bids every year is that then allows the SEC, not allows, the SEC could easily go to 9 conference games if they weren't cowards, but of course they are. So they have not gone to 9 conference games yet. They're still at 8, but this would allow them to go to 9 conference games. And then also, to maintain playing tougher out of conference games. And I have my own theories on how they could easily work around that without guaranteeing themselves spots. But of course, it's in everyone's best interest in those 2 conferences to have 4 locked-in spots every year. That would probably be, that certainly raises the floor significantly for those 2 leagues. What do you think Ross Bjork means in terms of the content and the better games? Why do you think that he views that as something that is would make that a preferable format to the other format is just what they're calling the 5-11 format or the 5-9 format, depending if it's 9 or 14 or 16 teams, where it would be the 4 power conference teams that are conference champions, and then whatever the 5th conference champion is, the 5th highest ranked conference champion, non-power conference champion, and then 11 at-larges. So that's the other option that we're talking about. So why does Ross Bjork feel like it would be better content to do the 4-4-2-2-1-3 model?
Yeah, a number of reasons. One, it encourages or doesn't punish a game like Ohio State versus Texas. It doesn't punish those series. And that obviously people want to see that. That leads to better ratings, leads to more money and things of that nature. The television partners like those. The extra, the Big Ten playing 9 conference games, obviously there's more content there. If the SEC were to do it to go to 9 games, there would be more content there. But also, what you then can do in this model would be to create play-in games, and that would be the in the Big Ten standings, it'd be 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5, and the winners of those 2 games make the playoffs. Now, we'll figure out and down the road what happens with the championship game, the conference championship game, which in my opinion no longer matters because it didn't matter last year. Nobody was punished for losing that game, and everybody that made the conference championship games made the playoffs in a 12 team. So go ahead and assume they'd make it in a 16 or 14 team. So maybe, and nobody benefited from winning the conference championship. So maybe the benefit would be like, hey, you teams don't have to play. Now you finish top two, take a break. But that those kinds of things, just some, I mean, it doubles the amount of postseason games, or triples it or whatever in terms of the Big Ten, which I think it also creates a more um, powerful game, impactful game, that meaningful game. Which I think if you continue to have these conference championship games, which end up like last year, and they don't impact anything, the ratings aren't gonna like the ratings, the meaning, like those games become less and less relevant. So I think also one of the things that I don't know if he talked about this, but would just be inherent in this is that if you essentially have your top six teams in the Big Ten vying for the playoffs over the course of a season, that means probably you've got 10 teams vying for the playoffs in the course of a season. So games between Iowa and Maryland in October are going to be much more important than they would have been in the past. So there's content there as well where more eyes would be on it because now these games become more important.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when they were just talking about expanding from 4 to 12, that was something that I brought up a bunch of times, and I know you and I have talked about a whole bunch on various shows, that they were under the old system, 4-team system, functionally half of the sport was eliminated before the season even started, because if you were a non-power team, you needed basically multiple really good years in a row to even have a chance to make it. So now you've got those teams all potentially having a spot, a shot to get in. And also, yeah, once you've lost 2 games, if you'd lost 2 games under the old 4-team system, you were out no matter what. Now, if you have, now if you have 2 losses, who cares? We'll get into some of the specifics of some previous years, but there are plenty of teams that are 3-loss teams that could have been in those 3 versus 6 kind of games in the Big Ten in the past. So yeah, so that, and just to be clear, he was talking specifically, Tony was talking specifically about the Big Ten in that previous thing, because there were not 2 Big 12 teams that made the playoff last year. It was just the Big Ten, and the Big Ten and the SEC had those functionally unimportant conference championship games. So I went back and looked through every year since 2014. What would where would Ohio State have been better off, under the 4-4-2-2-1-3 system or under a 5-11 type system? And this is not the only thing that is going to make these decisions. And honestly, I think Ohio State would probably have been better previously. Under the previous 11 seasons, they probably would have been better under the 5-11 format, just as an individual school. That doesn't mean they would have made as much money. That doesn't mean they would have, would have been better for the whole Big Ten. But for Ohio State, I think they would have been better under the 5-11. And I will show my work here. 2014, they were entering the college football playoff. I'm just using the final college football playoff committee rankings on all of this. They were the number 4 team in the rankings, and they were the first Big Ten team. So they are in either way. No drama, no play-in game. They're in the field either way. In 2015, they would have been the number 7 seed, and they would have been the third Big Ten team. So they would have been in under the 5-11 model. They would have had a 3 versus 6 game against Oregon to have to get in under the 4-4-2-2-1-3 model. So in that case, you're in no matter what under 5-11. If you're the number 7 team, you would have been at risk of, if you lost to that 9-3 Oregon team in that 3-6 game, you very well may not have made the field as an at-large. I started to go through and trying to figure out, okay, well, who would have been here? And it's like, well, all right, so this team is here, but they would be playing in a different conference now, and so it got real complicated and real messy real fast. So we're going to say they would have been at risk, at least in 2015. 2016, they were the number 3 team in the rankings, first Big Ten team. They're in either way. It's 2017, number 5 in the rankings, first Big Ten team in either way. 2018, number 6 team in the nation, first Big Ten team. That doesn't feel like that long ago. The top Big Ten team was 6th in the college football playoff rankings. Everyone has come a long way since 2018. Either way, they're in either way there. 2019, they were number 2, the first Big Ten team. They're in either way. 2020, number 3, they're the first Big Ten team. They're in either way. 2021, they're number 6. They would have been the second Big Ten team. Again, they're in either way. 2022, they're the number 4, second Big Ten team. They would have been in either way. Now, 2023 and 2024, this is where you have a couple real interesting results. 2023, they were number 7. They were the third Big Ten team. They would have been playing a 10-3, well, I guess 10-2 Iowa team, I guess, in that game, because they wouldn't have played in the conference championship game, the game where they get clubbed by Michigan. They would have played a 3-6 game against Iowa. And as the number 7 team there, if you lose to Iowa, you very well could get left out in the 4-4-2-2-1 model. And then 2024, you remember that season, they were 6th in the rankings, 3rd in the Big Ten. Again, they would have been at risk if they lost to the number 6 team. There were only 5 Big Ten teams ranked in the college football playoff top 25. So I went, okay, I'll look at the AP ballot to figure out someone's got to be receiving votes. I'm sure then we can figure out, okay, where are they? Who would they have played? No, there was no one in the other teams receiving votes. So the next school up in just the league standings was Iowa and then Michigan. So you probably would have played Iowa again. And, we saw what happened. Ohio State played Iowa at home and beat them comfortably. But you're at risk. So that's 3. They would have, under the 5-11 format, they would have made it every single year, no drama, no fuss, no muss. Under the 4-4-2-2-1 format, yes, there's more content. Yes, it's probably more exciting. Yes, there's all sorts of ancillary benefits for the rest of the sport and all that kind of stuff. But I think it actually works out not in Ohio State's favor in a lot of cases there.
No, I 100% agree. 5+11 works out in favor of big time programs like Ohio State and the SEC. That's why the coaches want the 5+11. They want all of those at-large bids rather than having to vie for them. However, Tom, one of my points is in my sales job of this to the Big 12 and the ACC, in reality, if you're playing in those at-large games, you are a playoff team. So really, there's 6 Big 10 teams in the playoff. There's 6 SEC teams in the playoff, 4 Big 12, 4 ACC teams. Make everybody feel better. Because if you control your destiny and if all you have to do is keep winning, you're in the playoffs. That is what a playoff is. So I don't call them play in, Tom. I call them playoffs. But yes, 100%. If you don't have to play in a play-in game, your road is easier. My second point, and this is something that I said to Ross Bjork after we got done talking to him, and this is something he alluded to before, said, so if it goes to 5+11, say goodbye to the Texas games, the Georgia games, the Alabama games. And he's like, yeah, there's no reason to do those when the entire goal now is to make the playoffs and to look, as I think I wrote it yesterday or the day before, it becomes a beauty pageant and not a battlefield when you go 5+11. And the coaches would love to have a beauty pageant rather than the battlefield. So I think, yeah, for Ohio State would be great. But does everybody remember the non-conference schedule last year, the year before, the complaining about the schedule and how these are boring, this is boring? That's going to be every year with the 5+11, and there's no incentive. If losses, and it sounds crazy to say, if losses are going to hurt you, but losses will hurt you, but people are so afraid of losing that they're just going to schedule wins every chance they get. And with the Big Ten already having 9 conference games, boy, they're going to have to schedule 3. Last year's going to be the norm in terms of they'll probably, can we get Youngstown State twice in a year? Can we play them week 1 and week 3? So that is another issue that I think argues against the 5+11.
My question, and I sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, is there some reason that they can't just tell the committee the new criteria is the team with the most wins against good opponents, and don't worry about the losses? They're changing everything about the college football playoff. Is there some reason you can't just tell the committee, hey, whoever has good wins, whoever has the best resume in terms of good wins should be prioritized in terms of your selection, or you would do it as a computer ranking thing, and then you tweak the computer rankings. So we saw them do this in the BCS every year. They always fixed whatever last year's problem was in the BCS. You can always change what the criteria is, so just change the criteria so it's the more good wins you have, the better your case is. And if you lose some of those games, that's okay. If you lose to Texas, that doesn't kill you, especially you lose they lost to Oregon last year on the road by 1 point, and that really didn't hurt them very much. It was the bad loss against Michigan. So it feels like this is a problem that there's a workaround here, but I think secretly, Tony, the reason that everyone loves the 4-4-2-2-1 thing is when they say it's better content, it means it's more money from our TV partners to pay for all of the uncertainty facing college football right now. Now, will it be better content? Yes, absolutely it will. Is there a workaround around that? Yeah, there is. And I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I would be shocked if it was not for something close to 4-4-2-2-1, because ultimately everyone's going to probably make more money off of that, and that's sort of been the deciding factor in a lot of how everything in college football gets settled these days. But I think there is a workaround around that if they chose to. Everyone's acting like there's no possible other solution, and that's I think there's a pretty obvious solution. They just the folks in charge of college football writ large are probably just not that interested in finding that.
And it is kind of a big change, or it's a different kind of change. And one of the things that Ross Bjork did also say that one of the benefits of the 4-4-2-2-1 is you take a lot of the power out of the committee, and it becomes less about the committee and more about what you've done with on the football field. And also the 4-4-2-2-1 would, in theory, because if that happens, then we assume the SEC is going to 9 games. In theory, you could then do the Big Ten SEC like thing that they've talked about, the Big Ten SEC Challenge or whatever it is that you want to talk about. So that could be part of that as well, which would create then basically a 10th or 11th big time, or at least a Power 5, Power 4 game for the content providers. Tom, I'm not a math guy. Let me ask you one thing, because I know the SEC, one of the reasons the coaches don't like the idea of the 9th game is because the strength of schedule is so tough already. If they were to add another SEC game, wouldn't the entire conference just be adding a 500 team? So wouldn't the strength of schedule come down?
It depends on how you tabulate the strength of schedule there. It's if you just want to do it on a pure win-loss basis, yes, absolutely. If you want to do it as a if you want to factor in some of the more advanced metrics, which tend to favor the power conference, and especially the power 2 kind of teams at this point, then that probably will help your strength of schedule overall. But it feels like this is a situation where everyone's acting like there's not any other solution, and there are plenty of workarounds. However, I also recognize that I personally find we need to be guaranteed 4 spots or we're not coming to be a little bit petulant is maybe one word to describe it, but you gotta put your thumb on the scale a little bit. And the reason they come up with those numbers of 4 is, well, like historically, this is what we would have gotten. Like, great. So you weren't scared to compete back then, so why are you scared to compete now? But that's a whole separate conversation. So anyway, so we'll see how this all ends up shaking out. They have plenty of time to continue to fight and pull each other's hair and scratch each other's eyes and all that kind of stuff as the leaders of college football continue to bring the sport into the future. We will see how that all shakes out. But that is just one of the many things we're talking about right now at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Got a full team of insiders covering the team, recruiting, X's and O's, all that good stuff, plus a very fun and active community on the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Rubies of Columbus. That's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.